Hey folks, how you doing? Welcome back. I'm wrapping up a few things here in the shop. Right now I'm etching a couple of knives, and I'm actually just finished up a custom sheath. Back, okay. Many of you guys don't know if you've ever heard about what's called a K-bar. A K-bar is a Marine Corps fighting knife. Usually come in a sheath like this. Actually, it came in this was like a kind of a tan kind of color. And I turned around and the guy wanted me to make him a different sheath for it. So I made him a topography. Yeah, the light's probably not as good, but it's a topography sheath. And I did a leather belt loop on the back. So you can run his belt loop in there and carry that. And they normally have little belt loops like this on there. And instead I did a retention system like that. We'll call it the Asia Sampson test. There you go. I used to do this all the time, but yeah, there you go. So it's there. So I'm doing that, and laser engraving a couple of knives here for some folks. But one of the things I wanted to touch on real quick, and it's because one of the knives I have here brings this into discussion. And that is the care and maintenance of a knife. So let me spin around real quick here and I'll talk to you more about that. Okay, actually, you know what? I bet you, hopefully audio's not too bad. Still got some stuff running in the background, but the reason I want to do this quick video is it's care and maintenance of your knife. Many folks know that when I make their knives and I send them out to them, they're always covered in oil. And I did videos a while back. I used to use different types of oils and waxes. Renaissance wax is a really good one. I use True Oil for scales and stuff like that. But True Oil, sometimes you'll find it, and you'll find it on my knife too. Sometimes you'll find it gets hard and it crystallizes. Every now and then it'll be a little bit of the metal or something like that. So just gotta scratch it off or just clean it off with acetone or something. But I use butcher block oil. It's vitamin C rich. What I use is made in America. It's all healthy and good. You put it in your butcher blocks, cutting boards and such. And I put it on all the blades when I coat it and I'm done, it's sharpened, it's all finished. I'll put it on the blade and I'll put it in the sheath like that, and it'll get shipped to you just like that. In a way, it's kind of like getting a firearm that's got the plastic over it and there's a little bit of grease and everything. So here, hold on one second. All right, yeah, shut that off. I don't need it right now, so I'll take a second, take a break here. But I ship all the knives with butcher block oil. So there's that part there. Secondly, most all the woods, and when I first started out as a knife maker, I did just woods and micarta. Then I started stabilizing my woods if I could. Some woods I couldn't stabilize. Then I started having such a struggle in doing it and getting some of them to stabilize properly, and the costs in doing it myself for the volume I needed, it just wasn't advantageous. It was nice if you're just a hobbyist, but because I was at the time, I was doing 80 knives a year, and you have 60, 80, 100 knives in a year, and some of those had wood on there. Some of the woods people picked were better off stabilized than leaving raw. So at the time, you would get your wood, and if you have a knife that's got raw wood, you can use butcher block oil. You can soak it in I do a mineral spirits and what was the other one? It was mineral spirits and something oil. And I still actually have a jar in a cabinet over there, and I would soak the knives in it for days, if not a week. I would just soak the knife in that. And then I would wipe it clean, hang it, and then it would just drip a little bit. The wood would release whatever it couldn't hold on to, and then you wipe it clean and it crystallized and got hard. But it was still raw wood, so wood does have a tendency of absorbing its environment, drying, shrinking, twisting, all that kind of stuff. So if it came to a wood that I could know that I could get stabilized, I've been sending my wood out and getting it professionally done. And that's been working good for several years now. Now, when I put a knife together and I make a knife, many of you also have known that I have pins. The big 3/8 inch diameter, 10 millimeter pins, such as this Forgotten Coast canine knife, pin right here in this knife. Just got recently etched. I just gotta clean off the carbonization, and now there you go. Looks a lot better now. Focus, there you go. Looks a lot better now. Those pins are 3/8 10 millimeter in diameter, and they sit in the scales. They're the tang itself, the knife tang. Okay, that's the whole part of the tang. That's the tang. The tang has holes going through it. Some of those holes are for the little pins that are right here. Other holes are for the big pin right here. But the big pins, they don't go all the way through like I used to. When I was a novice and that had like a simple design, I could just put the pin and it would go all the way through there. But with costs being what they are, these things aren't very cheap. And then also with designs, I couldn't do that because if I had initials or a Forgotten Coast Canine logo, I can't put it through here the way you're looking at it because it is angled this way, the way Chris needs it to be. But on this side, it would be angled by me, which would be the wrong angle. It needs to be like this. So the mirroring effect. So I cut them in half, but the hole or the tang still has a hole that's the same diameter of that, and that allows epoxy to go all the way through, and the epoxy bonds to the pins and it goes through the knife. I also drill several other holes that are going through the knife tang that allow epoxy to go from this scale right here to this scale right here, and the scales have little dimples drilled in them that the epoxy can adhere to. Several videos in the past I've done, you'll see me doing that kind of thing, gluing up a knife and such. So I don't need to, touch on it too much more. And now the epoxy I use, I've touched on this several times in the past. I don't use a basic like Loctite epoxy that some guys might use. You could buy from stores. It's quick and easy kind of stuff. I do use a higher grade epoxy that many knife makers like myself use in our industry. Whether it's a West Systems or a T88 or a G-Flex. Even Combat Abrasives has an epoxy. These epoxies are made for knife makers and for scales and what we do. Now, in doing so and not having, now some knives do have mechanical fasteners. They'll use cordless bolts and such where it's basically a nut that sits through here and there's a screw that goes through both sides and squeezes the knife scales together and holds them on. Some companies use those kind of attachments. More or less it's because what they do is they allow you to change the scales, but also it's very easy for them because epoxy is an expense and it's a time difference. So they negate all of that by just using scales and screwing them on. Now it's not as easy to do when you make knives like I do, because you're doing it all free-handed or a little drill press. You'll find a lot of guys have smaller little CNC machines, even cheap Chinese-made ones, but companies that do that on large scales, they have huge CNC units and they can drill. Every set of scales is the exact same shape as the set of scales from 3 months ago. Every knife is the exact same shape as the knives they made in a batch, 6 months ago. Handmade knife makers, we don't have that. Our chances of this knife being the exact same size as somebody else's knife from 6 months ago is pretty similar, but not the exact same size because they're all handmade. Now the reason why I talk about all this and I go back to care for a knife is not just with the butcher block oil or what you do with it, it's keeping it that way. I use D2, it's a semi-stainless. It's only a couple % shy of being a full stainless steel. When D2 is heat treated to different types of variations of Rockwell harnesses, it's actually used to stamp or cut other steels of softer makes. So it's really good steel. Been using it ever since I started making knives. I learned on it, which is usually a higher end steel to learn on versus regular like 1085s, 1095s, 1084s and such. It's a little bit nicer steel and a little higher end steel. There's one company in particular, Benchmade, makes a lot of their knives in D2. I'm a big Benchmade fan. I really like it, and I like D2. It does do well in fighting corrosion and rusts and such. With that said, every knife, even if you end up with some cheap Chinesium or Taiwanesium that's 440 or such, you should still oil your blade. And I don't say use 3-in-1 oil or WD-40 or anything like that. Use butcher block oil, use something like that. Now you can also use something like my buddy over at Grumpy's Blade Butter. You can use a wax-based system like that, and you can apply that on your blades. Just wash and clean them, and then you apply that wax on them, put them in your knife sheath, and then you're good to go. A lot of people that live in inclement weather like myself, where it gets really hot and real cold, you'll have buildup of condensation and stuff depending on where you're at. Make sure you check on your knives periodically and maintain them. They're like anything else, any kind of tool or any kind of weapon, you need to maintain it to at least keep the edge or to keep the aesthetics of that knife. Now this leads me into one other situation that, and very few people this has ever happened to, and it only happens because of innocence and because of, and being naive is not a bad thing. Okay, it's just not knowing something, like being ignorant. Ignorant sounds bad, but it's, if you're ignorant of something, it's just because you don't know. Once you're educated in that, then you understand it. If it's brought to your attention, then maybe you'll do research on it, and now you're no longer ignorant or naive to that certain situation. When you come to my website and you buy a knife, you'll go on there and you'll buy a knife, and even if you don't want to buy a knife right away and you're not really sure what to do, I actually have a section on my website that has all sorts of things. It talks to you about ordering a custom knife, the time frame, the waiting, buying a knife, returns, all that kind of stuff. It also talks a little bit about taking care of a knife, do's and don'ts, and so on. And it's basically starting out, okay? When you go on that page, and a lot of people, you know, I'm just as guilty as that. We kind of look past all that other frivolous stuff and the white noise of something cool, and you direct yourself to what you want. You have a goal, this is what I want to do, I want the cool stuff, and then you move on. Well, recently there was a knife that I made and I sold, and the knife actually got given to his son as a gift at Christmas time. He used it, he loved it so much, he was beating it up, just absolutely making stories and memories for himself, which is I'm all about. But in doing that, his bride ended up taking the knife and she put it in the dishwasher. The reason why I mentioned that is it's that you should hand wash all your, whether it's my knife or somebody else's knife, hand wash your kitchen knives, your hunting knives, all that. If they're a custom handmade knife, do that to it. Wash it, take care of it. First and foremost, you don't want anything to happen inside the dishwasher that might damage your knife or the items that are with it. But with that said, I go back to epoxy. Epoxy does break adhesion when it's exposed to over 200 degrees for a certain period of time, and it could only be like 5 or 10 minutes. I've had to recondition knives in the past that weren't mine, that were sent to me, and I put them in my toaster oven, and I put it in a toaster oven at 200, 225 degrees for like 5-10 minutes. The knife is super hot, but what ends up happening is the epoxy breaks its adhesion from the steel and from all the pins. And it lets me pry the scales away, clean the knife, and then reapply new scales. Well, dishwashers get a little hot, and in doing so, and the dishes are in there for more than just 5 or 10 minutes too, at temperatures well over 200 degrees at water temperature. This poor young lady, she put her husband's knife inside the dishwasher, pulls it out, and the scales were all warping and everything was coming apart. Now they weren't done in micarta. This is olive drab micarta. I'm refurbishing his knife and upgrading it a little bit. He did it in some of the G-Carta, the stuff that you've seen, the rainbow trout scales, the Mexican ripple cut blanket, stuff like that. It was the rainbow trout knife, and it had the liners and the scales and everything. It all got soft. The epoxy broke adhesion. The scales got really soft, and they started to just kind of like drip away. And so he asked if I could do something with it, so he sent it back to me. So we're refurbishing it, and doing so, he just decided I can't replace the G-Carta scales. I can't get that rainbow trout scales anymore, at least not for the next few months. This is the end of, this is what, February of 2024, and I don't think I could get those kind of scales until April or May, because they make them in big batches, and then they don't make anything like that for months on end. So it kind of stinks, but it makes it really unique. So I talked to him, and so he's doing olive drab canvas micarta, which honestly, I love the G-Carta scales, but micarta is so much harder than the G-Carta, and they're affected differently, they're made differently, everything else. I really like the micarta, the canvas micarta and such. The G-Carta scales are beautiful, probably best on kitchen knives and on knives that aren't going to be abused as much, even though the G-Carta is hard. I've got the scales right here. They're hard now, but the epoxy and everything just breaks away, and that's just kind of what you're left with, is just the set of scales. So suffice to say, he decided to upgrade. He got the Forgotten Codes canine pins, went to olive drab. I'm re-etching the Maker's Mark. I just hand sanded it all, glued it, cleaned it all up yesterday. It's all ready. I'm gonna etch his name on there for him for free, and gonna get that set up, and I'm gonna mail it back to him. But I wanted to do this video, and again, it's not bashing on anybody. This has happened, I think, twice in almost, what, 10 years now of knife making, and all the hundreds of knives I've made, this is only the second time it's happened. Now, the last person that it happened to, they weren't very nice. I was new, I was pretty naive, I didn't have the best website designed and everything like that. I was pretty new and naive to everything and making a business and doing all that stuff, but I did make them a new knife and I sent it back to them free of charge. But I did make the website to educate people and to kind of just say, hey, you know, this kind of stuff, be aware of this, do this kind of things. And I'm always trying to learn and redevelop the website to educate people more. So it's always evolving and stuff, because again, I'm very ignorant and naive when it comes to running a knife business and social media and all that. I've stumbled more than I've been successful. And I've had a lot of challenges. So I'm not bashing on anybody. I just felt bad about the whole situation. But I wanted to do a video just to educate people about that, because maybe, you know, to go back years into my videos, I don't know which videos I talked about this before in. I don't remember. It's been several years since before I even moved to Wyoming. And it's on the website, but I thought I would do a video, just a standalone video on that. Taking care of your knives, what to do and don't do about it. Hand wash them, hand dry them, use a butcher block oil or a blade oil like Grumpy's blade butter or something like that. Again, I don't get anything for supporting them. They don't pay me. Just, it's a really good product. The guy's been working hard, him and his wife. It's him and his wife doing it and making it in their garage. They're doing it. It's a small business, and I like that. I like to support them. So something like a Grumpy's blade butter, the butcher block oil, I'll leave links down below to that kind of stuff. Wash, dry, clean, set them off to the side, do that. When I sharpen knives, and I'm gonna do a video on that separately, but when I come to my custom kitchen knives and some of my other knives, I have the luxury of going into my grinding room and I blade profile them myself and I hand do them and all that. Look at stuff that isn't as harsh to sharpen a knife or anything, because if it gets harsh, it scratches the knife up a lot more and mars it up and everything. You don't want to do that when you spend so much money on a custom knife that is meant to give you memories, not just, you know, just a look, a showpiece, but it's also meant for those memories and everything too. So you know, keep your blade sharp, use a small little honing rod or something like that, and but then make sure, you know, you keep it clean. Kydex, it can be washed and dried. Just do it by hand or a garden hose or something like that. Let it drip dry and everything, and then you can put your knife back in it after a couple of days. Use an air compressor, kind of blow stuff out a little bit. Do not put this in a washing machine either. Kydex can get very soft at 200 degrees or more as well. It will start to just become completely pliable and melt and get in this weird looking shape. But anyhow, I wanted to do this. So Red, I'm gonna etch up your knife, buddy, and I'm gonna mail it out to you. So it's all on you from here on out. Everybody else, I do appreciate the support. Keep an eye on all those codes to see what's going on at making this video. I'm not sure where this video is gonna land in regards to all the codes. Maybe they're already done. You did it all, I'm not sure. I just wanted to do this video real quick. I'm not paying attention to how many videos I got left before the announcement comes out. So, or it probably already has actually. So until then, gang, remember, like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. Keep me from the bottom of the YouTube bucket. I'm gonna hit 20,000 subscribers this year, so maybe I will do something after all for that. But until then, take it easy, stay sharp, and keep clean.